State Warriors are on their way to a fourth consecutive NBA final. This crowd is stunned. The 65-win Rockets are knocked off.
As the Boston Celtics will advance once again to the Eastern Conference Finals. Banner number 18 still very much in play.
Some players just never learn, don't they? The 76ers were up 3-2 in this series at one point. They were winning in the fourth quarter in Game 6, but now they find themselves scratching their heads as to what happened. The 76ers have choked in the playoffs year after year as of recent, and in this year, there's a special individual that deserves the blame for this choke job. James Harden, as you guys are well aware of by this point, is not the greatest postseason performer. When the lights shine the brightest, James Harden has shriveled up like a raisin. Although Harden has put up some incredible numbers in the regular season and has led his teams to later rounds in the postseason, he's consistently came up short come elimination. Let's take a deeper look at Harden's playoff performances over his career so you guys really get the picture. James Harden's first taste of the playoffs was with his days during the Oklahoma City Thunder. Harden, from 2010 to 2012, was on the Thunder and came off the bench, so you can't have superstar expectations for him right away. In 2010, James Harden put up about 8 points a game in his first round exit to the Lakers, who would later win the finals that year. In 2011, the Thunder lost in the conference finals to the Dallas Mavericks. In this series and previous, James Harden wasn't playing bad by any stretch. He was averaging about 13 points a game coming off the bench. Mind you, he averaged 12 points a game in the regular season. In 2012, the OKC Thunder made the NBA Finals, where they eventually lost to LeBron James and the Miami Heat. James Harden, from the first round to the conference finals, was playing good basketball. He averaged about 17-18 points a game coming off the bench, and he was doing this on higher efficiency than normal. But in the finals, it was a different story. You could really make the argument that this series is where his playoff letdowns started. In this series, he only averaged 12 points off 37% from the field and 31% from 3. In 2013, he was traded to the Houston Rockets. This was the place that Harden could show the league he was a superstar, a place where he could show everyone that he could lead a championship team. In Houston, not only did he start in games, but he drastically increased his production on the court. James Harden went from averaging 17 a game in OKC to averaging 26 a game in Houston. In the 2013 playoffs, the Rockets played against Harden's old team, the OKC Thunder. Needless to say, this series did not go well for Houston. They lost 2-4 in this series. Their second best player, Dwight Howard, was out. James Harden was putting up points, but on very poor efficiency. He shot 39% from the field and 34% from 3. But I guess you have to give him a pass, because this was his first year as the number one option on a playoff team. Next year, the Rockets had a spectacular season. They finished with a 54-28 record, awarding them the 2 seed in the West. They were scheduled to play the 7-seeded Portland Trail Blazers. The series was a letdown for the Rockets. They lost in 6 games. James Harden, once again, was scoring the basketball, but with terrible efficiency. If you thought last year's playoff splits were bad, Harden took them down to another level. In the 2014 first round, Harden shot 37% from the field and 29% from 3. That's not going to get it done in the postseason. In 2015, the Houston Rockets once again had a great regular season, finishing as the number 1 seed in the West. They were scheduled to play against the Mavericks. They beat Dallas 4-1, thankfully. Harden actually had a pretty good series. He averaged 28 points and shot 46% from the field and 37% from 3. Next, it was off to LA to play the Clippers. The Clippers at first found themselves up 3-1 in the series, but Harden and the Rockets managed to come back and win 3 straight games, winning them the series. Harden had a 26-point triple-double in Game 5. Harden could have played better though. He averaged 25 points on 40% from the field and 35 from 3. But it got the job done, so that's all that matters. Anyways, the Rockets were off to Golden State to play the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. And this series went terrible for Houston. They lost in 5 games. Although James Harden didn't play terribly, averaging 28 points and shooting 46% from the field and 43% from 3, a loss is still a loss. You guys will see this trend throughout Harden's postseason career. He's a very bipolar player in the playoffs. He's very prone to having some amazing nights, but also equally, if not more prone to having some butt-awful performances. In 2016, the Rockets didn't have quite the season they were hoping for. They finished with a 500 record at 41-41, putting them at the 8th seed. And once again, they were playing against the Golden State Warriors in the postseason. Despite Steph Curry only playing 2 games this series, the Rockets still lost in 5 games. Harden only managed to shoot over 50% in 1 game this series, and it was Game 5 where the Rockets lost by 33. Like we said, James Harden can play very well and have great playoff games, but he's more likely to have a terrible game if we're being honest. If we've learned anything about James Harden so far, it's that he can't string apart good performances together. His consistency is just not there. In 2017, the Rockets finished with the 3rd seed in the West, with a record of 55-27. In the first round, the Rockets beat the Thunder in 5 games. Harden took care of business, averaging 33 points on 41% and 24% from 3. His performance from the free throw line was great. He shot 66 of 73 in this series, shooting 90% from the line. In Game 3, the only game that the Rockets lost in this series, Harden shot 18 for 18 from the free throw line and shot 52% from the field, leaving him with 44 points. Anyways, round 2 was against the San Antonio Spurs. This series didn't go great for the Rockets. They lost in 6 games. These playoff shortcomings were really starting to define James Harden as a player now. Harden put up 25 a night on 41% from the field and 30% from 3. The Rockets needed more out of Harden if they ever wanted to sniff a championship. Let's look back at the individual games. Harden wasn't great in Game 1 or 2, putting up 20 and 13 points with bad efficiency. Games 3 through 5, however, he played pretty good basketball, 42, 28, and 33 points with good efficiency. But elimination games really make or break a player's postseason reputation, and the latter happened to James Harden. The Rockets lost by 39 points in this game, and Harden only had 10 points, shooting 2 of 11 to show for it. It's moments like these that break you. In the 2017 offseason, the Rockets acquired Chris Paul, a key addition that would hopefully get them over the hump. In 2018, the Houston Rockets had a record of 65-17, putting them as the 1 seed. Their first round competition was against the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Rockets took care of business like they were supposed to, winning in 5 games. The next series was against the Utah Jazz. Once again, the Rockets won in 5 games. Harden put up about 28 and 7 a night, along with shooting 40% from the field and a hair under 30% from 3. The efficiency could have been better, but what matters most is the Rockets won this series. Their next opponent in the Western Conference Finals was a very familiar one, a team that the Rockets just couldn't get over, the Golden State Warriors. And the Rockets were actually doing a good job in this series. They were up 3-2 at one point, but something terrible happened. During the final seconds of a Game 5 victory, Chris Paul suffered a hamstring injury. This put him out for the last 2 games of the series. Losing Chris Paul lost the Rockets an extra 20 points a game. Unfortunately, the Rockets couldn't bounce back from this. They lost the next 2 games, losing the series in 7 games. This moment right here goes down as one of James Harden's most disappointing moments. Houston was 1 game away from making it out of the West, 1 hamstring injury away. Although the series loss wasn't exactly Harden's fault, he was the best player on this team, so you get the praises when you win and you take the blame when you lose. In 2019, the Houston Rockets finished at a record of 53-29, putting them at the 4 seed. Harden averaged an incredible 36.7 points a game this season. The Rockets beat the Utah Jazz, the 5 seed, in 5 games in the first round. Harden and the crew took care of business in this series. Next, it was off to play the number 1 seeded Golden State Warriors, and I'm sure you guys can guess how this went. The Warriors won in 6 games. Harden, individually on paper, had a great series. He averaged 35 points, 7 boards, and 5 assists, and his efficiency was up 44% from the field and 35% from deep. But a loss is a loss at the end of the day. This one dynasty was preventing Harden in Houston from ever sniffing a gold ball. In the 2019 offseason, the Rockets acquired Russell Westbrook, hopefully enough offensive firepower to push them over the hump. In 2020, the Rockets were 44-28, getting them the 4 seed. Their first round was against Chris Paul and the OKC Thunder. the Rockets won this series with a 2-point margin in Game 7. The Rockets made it out of the first round. Nothing new. Their second round competition was against the 1-seeded Los Angeles Lakers. And if you guys remember the bubble Lakers, you know how this series went. The Lakers were on a league-stomping journey this postseason, and the Rockets just happened to be in their way. The Rockets lost in 5 games. Harden averaged 29 points a game with 50% from the field and 37% from deep. The story of the Rockets has been they beat their weak first-round competition in front of them, but then they get blasted by a powerhouse in the next round. Unfortunately for Houston, this series marks James Harden's last straw with this team, because during the middle of next season, James Harden was traded to the Brooklyn Nets, where he was going to play with KD and Kyrie. The Brooklyn Nets at the end of the season finished with a 48-24 record, giving them the 2 seed. The Nets beat the Boston Celtics in 5 games in the first round. The Big Three in Brooklyn was firing on all cylinders. Combined, these 3 superstars averaged over 85 points a game. With this firepower, it was looking promising for James Harden to revive his playoff legacy. The next round was against the 3-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, but the worst thing happened. James Harden, minutes after tip-off, suffered a hamstring injury. Kyrie Irving, later this series, had an ankle injury. Both Harden and Irving played 4 games each this series. Both were in and out of the rotation. They were both a shell of themselves in this series. Kevin Durant, on the other hand, probably played some of the best basketball of his life this series. He averaged 35, 10, and 5 this series. The Brooklyn Nets were literally inches away from winning this series, and probably winning the finals, but KD has breadsticks for feet, and the Bucks won Game 7 in overtime. James Harden in 2022 underwent some changes. During the trade deadline, he was once again traded to the Philadelphia 76ers to team up with Joel Embiid. Throughout Harden's career with both Houston and Brooklyn, he never quite had the superstar big man that he did with Joel Embiid. This was his chance to redeem himself. The 4-seeded 76ers first-round series was against the 5-seeded Toronto Raptors. The 76ers took care of business here, winning in 6 games. Harden, while only putting up 19 points a game this series, filled more of a playmaking position on this roster, averaging double-digit assists this series. But don't get it twisted, he was still expected to score the ball at a high level. Anyways, the second round was against the Miami Heat, and unfortunately the 76ers lost this series in 6 games. Playoff Jimmy was just too much for the Sixers. This was supposed to be Harden's redemption playoff run. He had a superstar big man along with other quality role players. In 2023, the 76ers were good enough to get the 3 seed in the East. Their first round competition was against the null and void Brooklyn Nets. This was an easy series for Philly. They took it in 4 games. Now it was off to Boston, where they played the 2-seeded Celtics. At first, as you guys remember, about a week ago, this series was going okay for Philly. The Sixers at one point had a 3-2 lead this series. James Harden had 2 40-point games throughout these last 5 games. He was looking to reset his playoff narrative with a win in this series. All it took was one more win. But in Harden and 76er fashion, this never happened. The 76ers had a good lead in the fourth quarter of Game 6. Jason Tatum, until about 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, shot 1 for 14 from the field. This was the 76ers' chance to steal the series, and they couldn't capitalize on it. Then Game 7 rolls around. It was looking okay for Philly in the first half. That's until the Jays took over in the second half. Boston Celtics outscored the 76ers in the second half 57-36. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown had a combined 76 points. As for the Sixers, Harden shot 3 of 11 from the field with 9 points, and Embiid shot 5 of 18 with 15 points. Yup, the same guy that won the MVP. James Harden once again came up short in the postseason. Harden has had way too many chances to show us all that he isn't a playoff choker, but he's never delivered. James Harden for his career has averaged 24.7 points, 5.6 boards, 7 assists, has shot 44% from the field and 36% from 3. In the playoffs, his averages soared down to 22.7 points, 5.5 boards, 6.3 assists, 42% from the field, and 33% from 3. You see, James Harden is a super inconsistent playoff performer. He'll either give you 40 and give you flashbacks to when he won the MVP, or he'll give you about 9 points with terrible efficiency and give you flashbacks to this. So, let's look at these performances. In the most clutch playoff games, Harden has always came up short. Let's look at the 2015 Western Conference Finals. Harden is more than capable of giving us a show in the playoffs. 2 great games with 38 and 45 points in the Western Conference Finals, but he's equally more capable of choking harder than a toddler with his first Lego set. Like during Game 5 of this series, he shot 2 of 11 with 14 points. Another great example is 2017 versus the Spurs. Harden goes for 43, 28, and 33 with good efficiency. Things are looking good for him until the elimination game happens, where James Harden lays a fatter egg than any bird you've seen. Oh, and we can't forget about last year against Miami. All these games are just a few examples of what you can get out of James Harden in the playoffs. And this year's postseason shortcoming is nothing we've never seen coming. I guess the flopping game doesn't work in the postseason. The refs want to see the best basketball team win, not the best set of actors to win. Despite teams with James Harden finishing first or second in their conference in the regular season multiple times, or with the top 4 in the conference almost every year, the playoff result has always been the same. But I think based off this year's playoffs, we've learned that the regular season doesn't matter come playoff time. There are certain players that are just cut from a different cloth. Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. We're starting to see some players make strong cases for this list, but James Harden is definitely not one of those players.